Welcome back, game and app development students. This is Mr. Owl. Sorry I can't be with you there today. I'm sick and I'm also in meetings today. And last day I told you I would upload some of our live in-class tutorials to remind you of what you're working on while I'm gone. I thought those tutorials were maybe a little bit too interrupted by little things in class. So I'm going to quickly re-record a general overview of all the elements we have to work with as you do some exploratory design work today. So once you have your project up and running, we're going to blitz through a few different topics here. First, what is it we see? Over on the left, our hierarchy shows all the objects in our world right now. So far, we have a main camera and a light. You might have a bunch of 3D objects or terrains. Right now, I don't have anything just yet. In the middle, we see our scene. Remember, I can right-click to move around, use the WASD keys, Q and E to go up and down. So some nice shortcuts to move around and see things in different perspectives. And on the right is the inspector. This is where we see information about whatever it is that we've clicked on to customize its properties and attributes. And in the bottom, we see a list of all the different assets that are in our program. I'm actually going to leave these here for now, maybe. I did some importing of some different types of things for trees and different, I guess we call them textures here. I think I'll just leave them in. So what do we do once we know kind of what we're looking at here? Well, let's create something. I'm going to create a capsule for now. Why not? A bit of a different shape. And I can see that it kind of added into my world in a kind of a weird spot. Look at our position coordinates. I'm just going to change these to 0, 0, 0, which makes it right smack dab on top of the camera. If I look at my camera view, I don't see it because I'm kind of inside of it. So if I back up my camera, now I can see that capsule quite a bit better. Wonderful. A reminder of our sun. What we can do with it is use our rotate tool to make the sun rise. Let's see if we can see it in the background there. Rise or set. And then it changes the lighting on my capsule as I do so. Let's go from the back, rise and set. So I still have some lighting shining in it, but there's the shadows. I can choose kind of what date, night cycle period I want for now. So I got my camera in a good spot for this capsule. I got the object added. I could add more objects if I want. For example, maybe a cylinder. And then I'm going to use my move tool to maybe move this guy over here, bring it up, look around, see where I've got it. I want to bring this cylinder and maybe kind of think about adding it to the bottom of this capsule here. Seeing if I can make something more like a rocket. And I can just play around with this a little bit till I get the position looking pretty good. Looks all right for now, not perfect. Maybe a tiny nudge over here. Remember, I can always type in the numbers over here too to make this look a little bit more seamless, but awesome. Looks like I got something there that looks like it's merged a little bit. And now I can click and drag over both and move them together as a group. I'm not going to worry about grouping objects right now, but I might want to play around with the idea of making something that looks even cooler. Remember this resize scale tool? If I click on the middle and drag up, I can scale this or which direction that I choose. So I can consider making a bit of a platform for this, and then I'll choose my move tool, drag it over, and drop it underneath here by pulling it up just at the bottom here, and I can use the shadow to help guide where I'm going to place it, take a peek. Looks like it's sitting there nicely, and now I got this capsule sitting on a platform. Cool, so I made some basic art of something that looks kind of like a spaceship scene getting developed here. And that's me playing around a little bit with some of the 3D objects just to make a creative design. And your test today, in part, is to see what you can create using 3D objects to make them a scene of your own imagining. Let's move on to the next part though. All right, in this part, I want to actually maybe avoid all of these different 3D objects for now. So I'm just going to erase them, and instead I'm going to create a special one called the terrain. And this is going to be my big world here that I can do a bunch of stuff with. So on my terrain, I'm going to zoom way out so I can kind of see it all at once. I can also double click on it to have a nice top-down view and maybe zoom in from here if I wanted to. And let's call that good. When I click on my terrain on the side of my inspector, sorry, I'm just going to cough in the background here. Oh, I have some tools I can use. First thing, in my settings, all we're going to worry about in settings right now is our terrain width and length. Maybe I want to make it a bit smaller. Maybe I want to make it bigger. Up to you. I'm going to leave it at 500 by 500 for now. I'm not going to worry about too much other information about details or all the other effects and settings we can choose here. So I'm going to go back up to the top and choose some of my paint terrain tools. I could make a neighbor terrain if I wanted, but I'm just going to leave it as one and raise or lower my texture. Remember that brush size determines how much of my terrain at once I'm going to affect, and my opacity determines how quickly it changes it. And then I use these different patterns. This one looks cool. I'm going to start by just clicking and moving my mouse to make a cool kind of a bit of a bumpier mountainside look emerge from the ground. And then maybe I'm going to make something that looks a lot more like maybe a mesa, like really smooth in how it's built. So I'm going to make this go a little bit faster, a little bit bigger over in this corner. And I'm just going to make this big, whoa, this big pillar. That's kind of a weird geographical thing, but it's a game, so I can do whatever I want. And then maybe I'll choose this kind of wacky one, and I'll make it a lot smaller and a lot slower. And I'll just make some of these little interesting kind of volcanic style mountains and let the textures pop in, let the shadows and shading kind of get built. And maybe I'm going to make some that are a little bit bigger, so I'll make it work a little faster. Some nice spiry, villainous looking mountain bits. And I'm not going to do too much in front of you right now, but you can customize what you want your world to look at. Remember, if you hold shift and click, you can also remove stuff from those spots. So here I can kind of like make this mesa kind of thing look a little bit cooler by just removing this pattern from it. Oh, that looks way cooler. And kind of cut out some jagged bits and make some kind of valleys in it. This is actually looking kind of cool. I like this idea. I might, if I had more time in this video, I might play with this for now and make this really cool, like deep, scary pit. You can play around with all this type of stuff on your own. Yeah, that's looking a lot cooler to me. And so now I have kind of playing around with terrain, raising and lowering. And let's do a little bit more with this terrain. We talked about being able to go to the asset store, and we can scroll on the right hand side and filter only free things, pricing 0. And now when I search, maybe I put in trees, I can see, oh, it took off my pricing thing. Let's put it back. All the free trees. And this realistic tree one, we used it in class. This is one that I think I imported into this project. We'll see. Maybe not. I'll just download it, let it decrypt, and I'll import it. It's going to go faster on this computer than on yours at school. It's my home computer, which is a lot nicer, but haha, you have to wait. So I'm going to import everything. I'm not going to worry about what I'm importing. And now that it's imported, I see the trees down here, but I don't deal with them there. I click on my terrain, and I go to, oh, it's this tool here, paint trees. No trees defined, however, so I'm going to edit and add a tree. And in this menu, I have to actually choose a game object. So I'm going to open up the list of trees, and here's a whole bunch. I think I had another one I downloaded with all these bushes. Then I have these trees from this new file. Let's go with a bush, actually. So I'm going to select this bush and add it. Cool. Maybe I'll add one more. Let's make an actual tree this time. This tree seems good. Double click, add. Now I can place some trees. I can place a whole bunch of trees in a big area by clicking to make some forest nice and quick and easily down in this part of the map. If I drag, go across, that's going to be quite full of trees, maybe too full. Interesting how it has a different color there. Oh, it's just because there's something under the map that it's rendering differently. Interesting. Or I can make one tree at a time by just doing brush size of 1 and tree density really low. And then wherever I click, I'm just going to place these brushes, maybe to just like decorate certain spots on the pinnacles of these things. And so these are the bushes, and I can just kind of customize where I want these to be. And I can spend tons of time making my whole area have a custom look as I see fit. And I can also mass place these. This is kind of a cool one. Pops up this menu. The number of trees, I'm going to say just place a whole ton of them, 10,000 of them, keep the existing ones, and let's place. And it's going to generate randomly on my scene a whole bunch of stuff. Maybe you want that, maybe you don't. You can always go in, brush size and density, hold shift to erase the ones you don't want after the fact. It might be a little bit weird to have them up here in this mesa type thing. I wonder if any spawn down in here. It looks like some did, kind of fun. Way down at the bottom. Yeah, it spawns some trees at the bottom, which is, I guess, kind of cool. Let's just travel through the world here as we can. Maybe this is too dense. Up to you to decide what you want yours to look like. So there's trees. In the next part, I'm going to show you about textures, which we run out of time for in class. All right, let's talk about textures. So on this menu, when I go to paint texture, I actually have to add a terrain layer. So I'm going to go add layer. And I downloaded some terrain textures from the store and imported them. And you can just mess around with downloading some different packs if you'd like to. And I think I want my world to be kind of rocky. So I'm just going to choose this as the terrain layer that I've added. And it's going to initially paint everything in my world with that texture. Already looks a lot better. But it doesn't really make sense maybe to have all these trees just growing on this kind of rocky ground. So I'm also going to add a layer for what looks more like nice lush grass. And now that I've chosen this as the second layer, I can actually start to paint it like I did before in kind of the same way. I can just choose the brush size and how fast I want. If I want it to just paint a little bit of a marker of maybe some grassiness, I can just, you can see it kind of coming in here just a little bit as I can drag across it. Or I can make it kind of all come in one big shebang as the texture fully being painted in there. Control Z because I don't want up on the rise there, but let's make the grass texture. Oop. I'll be a bit more careful here, but underneath all these trees, so they're kind of on the grass there. Make my brush size a bit smaller. Maybe I want to be a little bit less aggressive for my painting. Let's just fill in really roughly right now some of these spots and just make my scene have more believable kind of texture pack to it. And I can leave some rockiness on the ground. Maybe some grass creeping up the spire there. You can play around to make yours look a little bit better at this point. I just want to show you how we get a texture in. Let's add one more. This is another one. Looks kind of like browner grassiness. Let's make this spirey thing have this texture. That's kind of cool. I'm going to make this a lot smaller so I can be precise and not paint the ground this color as I paint it in here with this one as well. And suddenly my world is emerging as something a lot more interesting as I build it. Cool. So, what your task is to play with these tools and build a cool scene that you think is a cool thing for the game. You've got some terrain and some of this world building stuff in place. Maybe you want to add in some of your objects. Maybe I want to create a cool looking ancient temple, or maybe I want to make some kind of sci-fi device. And I'm just going to start by building a cube, double clicking on it to find where in this cube popped up in a really weird spot. I want to make this cube quite a bit bigger, so I'm going to expand its size and get a sense of where I am in the world by zooming out a little bit. And here I am way underground, so I need to pull this guy up. I can go through this process of clicking and dragging things everywhere, but I could also, if it's being cleverer, actually figure out where did my world itself pop up. Let's just see here. Let's zoom up, or I can just double click on my terrain and see where its position is. 0, 0, 0 is its corner where I see this movement stuff. I'm just going to send my cube there. Look, it spawned in a really weird spot. So I'm just going to reset it. And now my cube has ended up in that corner. So now it's a lot easier to move it into position. So maybe I decide, kind of tucked away in this desolate corner of the map, I can take this and maybe stretch it up a little bit bigger and make it a little fatter. Increase its size, maybe lift it up so that the bottom's just at the ground level here. And I suddenly have a bit of something that could start to become a building of some kind as I add more details. And I can just play around and have fun, adding some cool stuff, making a really nice 3D scene that I could be putting in gameplay in at a different point in time. Have fun with this. Mr. Chu and I are looking forward to seeing what it is that you can create when we're back with you on Friday. Enjoy!